Good afternoon and welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier. I hope the week has gone well. We always start with macro thoughts because there's so much going on. If you're focused solely on the dollar index as your dollar proxy, you're missing the broader story, and this is from Santiago AU Fund. Similar to myself, he's been bullish the dollar all year. At the end of last year, I said the direction of the dollar is therefore pivotal. Everybody was terribly bearish at that time, and I predicted a 10% rally through year end, and specifically today we're seeing a bit of acceleration. Safe havens, which I'd spoken about severally and described as being in nosebleed territory, that's gold, the yen, the Swiss franc, sovereign bonds, Bitcoin, priced for Armageddon or apocalypse now. But if you look at the markets now, dollar yen has come off a little, dollar yen has rallied, gold 15.25 off those recent highs. And that's why I said you can't go much further when you're priced for Armageddon. Trump, this is brilliant, as I suspected it was the case at the time, made up high-level phone calls with China to boost markets, aides admit. I'll make my observation momentarily, but he is, as I wrote in May, highly tuned to the markets and in fact something of a 21st century artiste. Positive trade war tweets are timed around the US market hours and designed to soothe, massage and finesse US asset prices, and he turns more negative in Chinese trading hours. But the problem with that strategy is that it's a cry wolf. Its shelf life is just cry wolf, right? You can say it once, twice, 3 times, but not more, I don't think. Nevertheless, he's very sensitive to the market. The renminbi, this is a projection by Peter L. Brent, who's a chartist that I follow, and he's talking about the renminbi being headed to 7.7285 as China devalues the renminbi in trade war with US. And that's an extreme projection on a complete blow-up, I would imagine. Currently we're at 7.15, and it remains the most important currency to watch right now. And there is a feedback loop phenomenon for which the renminbi is the catalyst. I came across this from Eric Cantona. I'm a Man United supporter, and he's always been thought-provoking. And he said something, you click on the link, soon science will not only be able to slow down the aging of cells, it will fix cells, and so we will become eternal. Only accidents, crimes, wars will kill us, but unfortunately crimes and wars will multiply. I love football, he said. Thank you. This is a photograph of a lion in the Masai Mara, July 2019, taken by Arnfinn Johansson in aid of the Sheldrake Wildlife Trust. I became quite obsessed with lions because of these documentary makers in Botswana. We've obviously been there for about 25 years, and it's a husband and wife team. We've got to watch it, it's unbelievable. And they're telescoping into 90 minutes what they've filmed over the space of a decade, and it's just remarkable. Scientists on Wednesday announced the landmark discovery in Ethiopia of a nearly complete skull of an early human ancestor that lived 3.8 million years ago. Fossil dubbed MRD provides insight into a pivotal period for the evolutionary lineage that eventually led to modern humans. Belongs to the species Australopithecus anamensis, which first appeared roughly 4.2 million years ago. Afar region of Ethiopia, we are talking about the most complete cranium of an early human ancestor ever found in the fossil record older than 3 million years, hails from a time between 4.1 and 3.6 million years ago. The evolutionary lineage that led to people's split from the chimpanzee lineage roughly 6 to 7 million years ago, gradually acquiring traits such as bipedal walking, flatter face, and increased brain size through a succession of species. Our species, Homo sapiens, appeared roughly 300,000 years ago in Africa. When you look at the scheme of things, we're just a blink of an eye, aren't we? What we're seeing here is that our evolution was not entirely characterized by a linear transformation by one species to another. Everything is non-linear in today's world, which takes me to Paul Virilio, who passed away in 2018, but whom I like to read, is not for everyone. Books with strange alien titles such as Negative Horizon, Polar Inertia, Bunker Archaeology, and The Lost Dimension. The vectors of communication call into being a whole new geopolitics, not of territories and borders, but of communication and computational infrastructure. Ranthambore, which I'd love to visit, is seen in this photograph by Camles M, and a tiger, of course. Il mondo è diviso in due parti, delle quali una è invisibile e l'altra visibile. You have to read that link in order to understand what it is. Politics is for the present, but an equation is for eternity. So said Albert Einstein. Brilliant, isn't it? Political reflections. Russia is almost certainly testing a dangerous nuclear weapon. Since a radioactive explosion in Nyonoksa this month, NATO has been watching closely, and according to sources in the alliance, quickly concluded it was part of a reckless test to develop an experimental new nuclear-powered cruise missile. It's quite extraordinary. For Xi, Trump's endless trade war and the Hong Kong issue have become unexpected gifts from heaven. Said another, for China to fight a protracted war, it first needs stability and solidarity. And then I came across an article which was saying the people's leader loves the people. And that took me back to May 2018, when in one fell swoop, President Xi Jinping was president for life. And I was saying that's put him on a pedestal and given him the challenge of the strongman conundrum, and that you own the entire problem. But in China there is only one decider, and that decider is Xi Jinping. And in that article I was quoting Frederick Wu, who said, if there is a decoupling between the economies, so be it. The Chinese people can endure more pain than the spoiled and hubristic Americans. 26th of August, I was writing about what I thought was a pretty aggressive Chinese response to Trump. China strikes at Trump. And I said the level of Chinese retaliation was the message and of the ilk of the shoe thrower in Iraq all those years ago. Exclusive Reuters report, amid crisis, China rejected Hong Kong plan to appease the protesters. That's in Reuters. They said no to all 5 demands, said the source. The situation is far more complicated than most people realize. The third individual, a senior Chinese official, said that the Hong Kong government had submitted the report to the Central Coordination Group for Hong Kong and Macau Affairs, a high-level group led by Politburo Standing Committee member Han Zhang, and that President Xi Jinping was aware of. So they're playing hardball. Now they've arrested the Hong Kong activist Joshua Wong. He was arrested by police on Friday on 3 charges. Agnes Chow has been arrested, according to a party colleague, Jeffrey Ngo, and another. But remember, it's still, though Joshua was very much the face, it remains a leaderless response, which is one of its strengths. And I wrote previously, when I was writing about the frontier from Kashmir to Hong Kong, I said I don't think it's possible to Xinjiang Hong Kong, and I still think it's not possible. China, of course, rejected the land plan, And as I said, the frontier from Xinjiang to Kashmir, from Gaza to Crimea, from Hong Kong to Taiwan are 21st century flashpoints. The Hang Seng Index has given away most of this year's gains as Hong Kong protests continue. China troops moved into Hong Kong, and of course the rejection of Lam's proposal. Staying with the theme of the frontier, of course, there's Taiwan, there's Hong Kong, Crimea, Gaza, Kashmir. But there are many other frontiers, right? The Mediterranean Sea, the Sahara Desert, islands because of the EEZs they control. Trump outreach to Iran caused for alarm in Israel, Asia Times. And apparently Trump avoided taking Netanyahu's calls. Although Trump did not meet directly with Zarif, Macron mediated between the two. The change in Trump's statements was dramatic and immediate. The US leader indicated a willingness to meet with Rouhani. Trump also said he was not looking for leadership change in Iran, and evinced he was willing to help relieve Iran's economic problems by providing them with a letter of credit, an about-face from the espoused policies of the administration. And it took me back to something I wrote in October 2013 when President Obama was going through an Iranian rapprochement. And I said, neither Riyadh nor Tel Aviv are aligned with President Obama's, now read President Trump's, Iranian rapprochement. And I was saying then, if the Pax Americana in the Middle East were a three-legged stool, with the US the most important leg, then Israel and Saudi Arabia are the other two legs of that stool. Going back to Trump offering relief, and I sometimes wonder if he likes playing Mr. Nice Guy, because even if you look at North Korea, it's been very coercive. And I was saying in May that Iran was at the edge. There is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over. And I said Trump has been a big proponent of coercive financial sanction warfare, and its expression vis-a-vis Iran is its apogee. All these people who are wailing and gnashing of teeth know that there are two ways of doing what they want to do, Jacob Rees-Mogg. One, change the government, and the other is to change the law. If they do either of those, then there will be an effect. If they don't have either the courage or the gumption to do either of those, then we will leave on the 31st of October in accordance with the referendum result. Boris is obviously preparing for an election, said Conservative lawmaker Ken Clarke. He's decided that he wants a people versus foreigners election and a people versus parliament election, and he's blustering away with making this country the greatest country in the world, patriotism, Donald Trump style stuff. Corbyn, on Monday, we will introduce what is known as the Standing Order Section 24 motion, and that would be to try and have an emergency debate. The Financial Times, Boris Johnson has detonated a bomb under the constitutional apparatus of the United Kingdom. I wrote about this in the 5th of August, and I said, Johnson is elected to quite properly take an impossible as nothing, can-do political posture. And I said, but the bottom line is, can he swing it? And I think he can. And he is. And he wasn't bluffing. Every action, every appointment, every word since he entered number 10 signals the same thing. Britain is leaving the EU on October the 31st. Can he self-eject Britain? Can he be stopped? I said this is a political calculation, and so far from what I can see, you might disagree with the merits of the strategy, but the strategy is working. It's triangulating the opposition. But I would go back to the August when I said I could not help wondering if this sterling moment is precisely like it was in 1992, a no-brainer. Billionaires Elon Musk and Jack Ma say the biggest problem the world will face is a population collapse. Not going to happen in Africa, however. If you had said 2 years ago that the status of global geopolitics and financial markets depended on the world's supply of pigs, you would have been laughed out of the room. But you would have been right. Santiago AU Fund. Pork inflation in China amid the trade war. I've never seen anything like this. A vendor has been selling pork for nearly 20 years in Beijing. Every day the price rises more. International markets, this is Hayek and Keynes. Just keep your eye on the thin red line. And this is safe havens. This is the thin red line, the red line there. That's government bonds. Part of this gold, yen, Swiss franc, sovereign bonds, all being priced for Armageddon. I thought they'd way overextended themselves. 10-year above 1.5%, 30-year above 2%, both just double bottomed. And that took me back to the last time we had this crazy move, and I was quoting Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice, and I said if volatility spikes, positions are going to be reduced en masse, or to put it another way, and to borrow the lyrics from the Eagles' Hotel California, mirrors on the ceiling, the pink champagne on ice, and she said we're all just prisoners here of our own device. Last thing I remember, I was running for the door. I had to find the passage back to the place I was before. It is Voodoo economics. And Bianco Research says, why would anyone in their right mind buy a negative yielding 50-year bond? Because its price is up 36% year to date. It's just incredible. It's up 18% in a month since the yield went negative, and that's what I mean, bond yields in tilt mode. Currency markets, let's have a look. Euro dollar 110.41. We're going to fall like a hot knife through butter through 110. Dollar index 98.546, accelerating. Japanese yen 106.40. Can't bet against the yens. When it moves, it moves. Swiss franc, last time I looked, 9.9885. The pound, I remain very bearish and think it's a 1992 redux situation. Of course, in the medium term, it's a big buy. But we know many big buys that become cheaper in the short term. 121.64. Australian dollar 0.6721, India rupee 71.5485, South Korean won 1209.60, Brazilian real 41697, so that's not improving. Egyptian pound 16.557. Investors made out like bandits in Egypt, and the Egyptians have shown a tremendous understanding of what it takes to keep investors happy, and it really is impressive and worth, a substantial premium. South African rand 15.2666, 15 to 1550 range, not yet ready to hurdle 1550. Dollar index, this is a chart, 98.546, feels muscular this time around. Dollar yen, as I said, this thing can move like a blink of an eye, 106.40 last. And euro dollar, we're in fingernail territory, we're holding just above 110. Yesterday, Lagarde came out and was very dovish. We're going to drop below 110. Gold now, I've got two charts for you. The first one is from T Commodity, last trading at 15.26. The correlation between a stronger dollar and gold has gone out the window in large part because of this huge negative yielding bond hangover, which is making holding gold, which is paying you, it pays you no interest, but it's better than losing interest. This chart's from Adam Mancini. I, for one, think we need to pull back below 1500. Let's take a look there. Crude oil, $56.08. S&P just cut Argentina to selective default. It's not as if bond investors weren't bracing for bad news, David Inglis. As I said, China emerging frontier markets loop phenomenon, which had been super positive for more than 2 decades, is now in a major trend change and has turned negative. At that time, I was saying add to the Aussie dollar. This is a global trade proxy, and global trade is slowing short the Aussies. South African rand, that's what everyone reaches for. And there I said the periphery will get smashed as we're seeing it unfold in Lusaka. Emerging and frontier markets look in big trouble this time around, I said. Japan's trade with Africa is $17 billion in 2018, is half what it was in 2008, and a fraction of China's, which is more than $200 billion, official figures show. Abe Shinzo said he wanted to work with the continent to safeguard the Indo-Pacific, which connects Africa and Japan with great care as an international public good permeated by the rule of law. And when he was here for TCAD, the previous TCAD, and I attended that, he said Japan bears the responsibility of fostering the confluence of the Pacific and Indian Oceans, so it still remains uppermost in his mind. The eastern DR Congo is a wonder of beauty and intensity. That's from Tombwe on Twitter. From the glaciers of the mountains of the moon, tropical lakes and rivers are interspersed between volcanoes and rainforests, wildlife whose diversity extends far beyond imagination, the Virunga, the Kahuzi-Biega and the Tombwe. I've always wanted to go there. Power play in Harare, Africa Confidential, the main opposition party, wants an interim power-sharing deal. The government accuses it of using mass protests as a bargaining chip. It wants to remove Emmerson and Mnangagwa, the administration, through mass protests on the streets rather than a general election or other constitutional means. Well, those are not open to them. Sources in Chamisa's entourage admit taking advice from Odinga's advisors on tactics. Chamisa claims he won the July 2018 elections resoundingly, but was deprived of victory by electoral fraud. At every opportunity, Chamisa says Mnangagwa's incumbency is illegitimate, echoing Odinga's strategy of declaring victory in the polls early and going on declaring it. MDC calls the current political situation an illegitimacy crisis. This, the MDC maintains, is causing the country's current economic meltdown. Zimbabwe's problems are political and not economic, they say. MDC's proposed cure is set out in its roadmap to economic recovery, legitimacy, openness and democracy reload. Government claimed that the march was timed to embarrass Mnangagwa at the SADC summit the following day. It was much more likely to have been directed at the G7 meeting in Biarritz on 24th to 26th August. This was new to me. The G7 had planned to arrange a $2.3 billion bailout for Zimbabwe, which would settle its arrears with the World Bank, African Development Bank and European Investment Bank. They would then immediately release $1 billion in a fresh loan. The quid pro quo, insiders say, was for the Mnangagwa government to show goodwill on opening Zimbabwe's democratic space. They're not going to do that. For Chamisa, the prospects for harnessing popular anger appear good. In about 3 weeks, Zimbabwe's only reliable source of power, hydropower from the Kariba Dam, is likely to dry up after weak rain in the catchment areas. Limited imports from Mozambique's Cahora Bassa Hydro, South Africa's troubled Eskom, will not stop the 18-hour blackouts returning. The wheels of industry, mills of the mines, and irrigation for agriculture could stop, and the economy may well grind to a halt. All conditions which could help Chamisa's agenda. I take you back to October 2018 when I wrote The Government's Voodoo of Economics, where it spent $1.3 billion pump priming the economy ahead of the election. Money it did not have was the straw that broke the camel's back. 21st of January, I said Zimbabwe is at a tipping point, and I was saying there's a correlation between high inflation and revolutionary conditions. Then I'd been reading Yuval Noah Harari, and in his bestseller he says this about money, and I think this is the problem for the Zimbabwean ZANU-PF government. Money is accordingly a system of mutual trust, and not just any system of mutual trust. Money is the most universal and most efficient system of mutual trust ever devised. If you don't have mutual trust, you don't have money. Zimbabwe is a laboratory experiment. Inflation on the 29th of July was 176%. It's now calculated to be 230%. And I said there's a straw in a camel's back moment. And that, to wit, what's the price of a loaf of bread, the Minister of Finance was asked. It is whatever it is. So, he said, it's $6.50, okay. And talking back to that thing about Chamisa strategy, going back to Virilio, the revolutionary contingent attains its ideal form not in the place of production, but in the street, where for a moment it stops being a cog in the technical machine and becomes a machine of attack. In other words, a producer of speed. Opposition leaders' campaign to annul the May elections depend on getting more angry people on the streets. Africa Confidential, Malawi. Same thing. Paul Virilio. Juba's payday loan habit. Again, Africa Confidential. The government's fondness for pre-selling oil greases the wheels but hurts the exchequer. It's an addiction that will be hard to break. South Sudan's government earned more than $2 billion between 2013 and 2018 by pre-financing at least 32 million barrels of crude oil. The resulting debt burden could threaten the implementation of the revitalized peace agreement signed last September. This is the River Nile, a photograph I took a few years ago. South African all shares up 3.18% year to date. Dollar rand in a 15 to 15.50 range, not yet ready to hurdle 15.50. Egyptian pound 16.557, EGX 30 up 13.81% year to date. Nigeria all share down 12.74% year to date. I came across this from painter Betty Aqua, one of Ghana's new generation of pioneering artists. Ghana Stock Exchange down 7.64% year to date. Zambian opposition leader arrested, accused of defaming president. Small opposition party on Wednesday on charges of defaming President Edgar Lungu by describing the head of state as a dog, his lawyer said. We will be the first entity anywhere in the world to hold an initial public offering of security tokens. This is Edmund Toei, Chief Executive Officer of Merge, which runs the Seychelles Stock Exchange. Seychelles has a population of 90,024 people, smallest population of any independent African state, one of 115 islands which make up the archipelago. This is a photograph of the beach that I took when Hannah and her mother and I visited. Barclays Bank reported first half earnings per share rose 2.899%. They're holding 81 billion Kenya government securities ready for sale, and for dealing purposes another 32 billion. Loans and advances net to customers up 5.98%. Total assets up 11.751%. Profit before tax and exceptional items was actually up 18.687%. And keep that number in mind because they had an exceptional item of 560.81 million. And that crimped what was quite a good performance. They're maintaining the interim dividend at 20 cents a share. So I thought that was a good result. PE's 8, and probably a buy on any pullback. Total Kenya reported first half earnings per share rose 7.317%. Gross sales surged 14.872% to 81.25 billion. Net sales up 48%, other income up 49%. Earnings per share was up 7.317%. Increase in gross turnover by 41% resulted majorly from bulk sales of the open tender system. Other income increased significantly by 49%, contributed by diversification of services in the company's retail outlets continue to invest in convenience stores, bonjour shops, car wash, total courts, auto service centres and partnerships with third parties. So it's an inexpensive share in my view on a price earnings ratio of 7.616. They chased volumes this time and that forecourt was up significantly. Jubilee reported first half earnings per share declined 7.265%. Gross earned premium and contributions was up 10.8%, other revenue was down 29%, total income down 6.6%, earnings per share down 7.265%. They hold 60.2 billion shillings worth of government securities. They have 15.828 billion in cash and cash equivalents at the end of this reporting period. And that speaks to the muscle in the balance sheet, big government of Kenya position, inexpensive now on a trading P of 6.95, but they have a big private equity component to the balance sheet, which is not that easy to value. Liberty Kenya reported first half earnings per share surged 45.833%. Gross earned premium revenue was up 3.861%, investment income up 22%, profit before income tax up 29%, earnings per share up 45.833%, cash and cash equivalents at the end of the period 4.43 billion shillings. It's well and conservatively managed, this franchise. Need to see some follow through, but these were good half-year results. Longhorn Kenya reported full-year earnings per share increased 1.493%. Revenue was down 5.655%. Profit before tax down 3.36%. Earnings per share up 1.493% at 68 cents a share. Cash and cash equivalents down to below $1 million. Dividend increased, but they're paying out 52 cents in dividend, EPS 68 cents. Reduction in revenue was attributed to decline in government spending on textbooks. Regional markets contributed to overall revenue increase by 41%. Significant investment in growing its digital product offering as well as expanding into new territories with special focus on francophone countries which Longhorn seeks to enter through strategic alliances. Dividend is worth 7.76% of yield. They probably need some more firepower. Finally, B.O.C. Kenya reported first half earnings per share declined 66.894%. Revenue was down. Revenue was up just 1.65%. EPS was down 66.894%. Cash and cash equivalents was down 85%. They're saying profit declined significantly, primarily due to a short-term outage of a key raw material and unscheduled plant downtime that impacted availability and cost of finished goods. Results were also impacted by reduced supply to some public sector customers due to long overdue debts and lost sales as a result of the illegal filling of the company cylinders. They're running down the cash position. Kenya shilling 103.55. Nairobi all share up 5.41% year to date. NSE 20 down 12.85% year to date. Wishing you a great weekend.